Welcome to the R video tutorial on building splines part 1. In this video tutorial, we're going to learn how to use R to build splines from the ground up. Actually, it'll be a series of videos. This is the first one. First one we're going to do is read in the data and look at it and then process it to where we can do something with it with splines. All right, so I have some proofing2.csv data set out there. It's in the repository. It's linked below, so you can just jump down there, go to the repository, get the data so you can follow along. I'm going to read this data in, and we'll look at what it looks like here real quick. When you read it in, you will see that you have a whole bunch of data. And actually what is here is the proofing times for, it's actually not proofing times, it's actually the height of proofing. So I was making some bread, and what I wanted to do is see how long it takes the bread to rise and then collapse again. So I don't know if you've ever made a starter, but you take a starter, you can measure it. I put in here 2 inches of what's called the starter batter and with the yeast, and let it rise and then measure it. I did a video recording so that I could measure it at each time, at each minute, all the way up to 120 minutes. And I did this 42 times. Okay, so this is the data, and it goes up to about 4 inches is as high as it gets, which is about doubling. All right, so now that I have this, the next thing I want to do is figure out how to plot it. So we want to look at the data first. And the reason you want to do this is because if you're dealing with splines, you have to kind of know where the important features are, change points, inflection points, things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a null plot, and I'm going to add to this null plot. I'm going to change the X limit so that it goes from 0 to 120, because that's what my data is. It goes up to 2 hours. My Y limit is, well, I started with 2 inches, and I know that it goes up to about 4 inches, so I'll do 1.8 to 4.2. And my X-axis label will be equal to minutes, and my Y-axis label will be equal to height. And this is in inches. All right, so if I do this, I'm going to get a null plot, which is exactly what I want. Okay, then what I'm going to do is do a for loop around this. And if you're not familiar with for loops, you should go back into previous videos and look at them. So for I in 1 to 42, that's how many we have. We have 42 measurements. But actually, I want to start it at 2. And I want to go to 43 because the first column in this is actually the time. So I want to start at the second column and run down through this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab off of the data. So I'm going to put in here lines. I'm going to put in here my X data, which happens to be my data 1, column 1. And the next, my response is data 1, and then here column I. So it's going to iterate through the columns and put a new line on for each of the columns for me. And I'm just putting some spaces in here to make it easier to read. The spaces are not necessary. And then I'm going to do color equals I, just so that they have a different color. And if I do this, I should get a reasonable picture of what this looks like. And sure enough, here we go. So I have all 42 lines on here. I'll hang on in just a second. I'll zoom this in. But I put all 42 lines on here, and you can kind of see the variability around this thing. So if I zoom this in, you can see they all kind of make it up to around 4 inches. But some are faster than others, and they sort of decay off. So basically, as the yeast eat all the flour and the sugars in it, they kind of collapse back down, and you end up with something that's about where you started, except you do have this beer on top that's left over. So, and it smells like a really nasty beer, because that's exactly what it is. All right, so this is the data itself, but remember, we're going to want to put a spline through this. So we need a way to reorganize this data. The data came to you in each column, so we're going to need to reorganize it first into something that's useful. So we're going to, again, have to use loops to do this. So the first thing we're going to do is reorganize the data. So here I'm going to use a loop, and let me move this up so that we have some space here. Again, there are 42 columns that we're interested in, but the first column is going to be the same and repeated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first grab the first row or the first batch of data. So this would be here. I'm going to grab and create my data one hold is going to be my output at the moment. I'm holding on to it with this, and I'm going to grab from data one all of the information from row 1 to 120 in columns 1 and 2. Okay, and this will give me the data for the first batch. So the column 1 is time 1, column 2 is the first, or the column 1 is the time in minutes, the second is the height. Okay, so then what I want to do is I'm going to want to do a loop again for I in, well, I now can start at 3 to 43, right? Remember there were 43 before. And now I'm going to stack these on top of each other. And this is where the fun starts. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my data one hold equal to my data one hold. And I'm going to R bind onto this. Okay, so I'm going to stack these onto each other. And I'm going to have a new one that I'm going to pull out. So I'll just call it data 2 right now. And data 2 will have in it, data 2 is going to be just like what I have up here, except that I need to jump down and, I don't need to jump down, I just need to switch the columns. So I'm going to take column 1 and column I. And that's going to grab column 1 and column I out for me, and it'll still grab the 1 to 120, which doesn't really matter. That's actually all of the rows. And then it should stack them on top of each other, and we'll see if this works. And it says the names don't match. And this is a common problem with this R-bind. It needs the names to be the same. So in the intermediary, you may actually need to do something like this. Instead of data 2 equal to data 1, what you can do is make it a data frame. And then have the first one, time is equal to data 1. It's what's in the first column. Okay. And then we will add data 1 what's in the second column, and this is height, and this is equal to, well, I just need column I now. So data 1 column I, and that should get us there. All right, and we don't need this on the end. Now if I do this, that means I have to set up the other one up here exactly the same way, which is actually pretty easy to do. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to paste this. And what I'm going to do here, well, this becomes column 2. This one's still one to the other. And now this one should work and give us something that is actually useful. Okay, that worked. Let's see. First, let's look at the dimension of data 1 hold. Okay, it's 5,040 rows by 2. So there's 2 columns. And we can look at the header of it. And bingo, we have the time and we have the height. Now what we probably should have did is also put in here the replication it was. So I'm going to come back here and I'm just going to do replication equals 1. Okay, and this will create that variable for me on there, and I'll just have ones in all the columns. But that means I'm going to have a replication here as well. Now I have to think, how do I get this? Well, it's going to be I minus 1, right? Because I'm starting at 3. This is column 2, and I've already did the first one. So you have to think about that. Now if I do this, I should have all of the information I need, and I didn't lose any in the process. So this is, we can look at head data 1 hold, and sure enough, it has this information in it. And if I look down farther, if I just type in data 1, hold, I can see that it has different replications for each one, and it has the different times if I scroll through it. All right, so this is enough for this video. We're just trying to process our data in so that we can use it. In the next video, we'll actually start playing with it and start building the spline. Now, but first we had to learn how to manage the data in, and part of data science is learning how to make the data in the format that you want. We went from a wide data set to a long data set. All right, see you in the next video.